Hello, my name is V Sin. My first impression when I saw the press conference for the Tokyo Game Show? Yes! Yes! They finally did something for the Vita! And not just something, they did quite a bit. I mean, when everyone heard about the announcement that on this day they're gonna announce stuff and it'll be more than you could possibly have hoped for, everyone was basically just saying, oh, it's a PS4 release date. No, we actually got stuff. We actually got stuff for the Vita. So, the big highlights of this, I think, were obviously the new model of PlayStation Vita and the PlayStation TV. I'll talk a little bit about the game selection at the end, but otherwise, we're going to focus on those two for this. Now, first of all, with the new PlayStation Vita, the core differences are lighter, thinner, has 1 GB of onboard memory, and uses an LCD screen. Those are the core differences. Yes, it does have the extra 1 hour of battery life, but there's also the micro USB. It's changing from the proprietary brick to micro USB connections, so you don't have to buy their connector. But I think the big change here is the screen, and the second biggest change is the memory. The onboard 1 GB of memory. So first, let's talk about the screen. Why do I care that the screen is LCD? I care because I like to use my Vita outside. And if you are a Vita owner, you may have noticed whenever you take your Vita outside into direct sunlight, it is bloody impossible to see the screen. I'm serious about this. If you have a Vita, you may share my pain. If you don't have a Vita, well, okay. But it's just really, really hard to see anything on the screen, even if you turn brightness all the way up to 100%. Under direct sunlight, it is bloody impossible to see anything. Really. So, the change to LCD is just a case of technology. OLED is basically a projection. It projects light outwards from the Vita. So, whenever light comes in and bounces off the surface of the Vita, it just distorts the crap out of everything. LCD, on the other hand, it's basically a color filter. So, in that case, you can either project light through it and it shines up, or you can bounce light off the crystal and it still creates the same image. This is why I say it's much, much better for outdoor use. In terms of indoor use, like if you're using it indoors, or if you're using it, say, at night on your bed when the lights are turned off, I like to do that a lot, then I'd say that LED is definitely better, but the LCD is clearly better for outdoor use. And I could tell that Sony is really trying to push the outdoor use, because if you've seen other promotional materials, not just the one from this TGS conference, the other promotional materials, especially for the Japanese games, whenever they show people playing with PlayStation Vitas, a lot of that footage is done outside. A lot of it. And so this is really important, though, because, this is supposed to be a mobile console. You take it with you. Yet the OLED kind of renders it unplayable in half the zones you're around while outside of your house. So I don't know. I like the LCD display. Now, the 1 GB onboard memory. It sounds good, but I'm worried about the implementation for two reasons. First of all, if I have onboard memory and an external memory, well, not really external, but a plug-in, where does my game save go? Do I get to choose which memory card it goes on? I really hope I do, because it ties into my second issue. And my second issue is changing the region or account on your Vita. I particularly have this problem because I have only one recording Vita, and I record both North American and Japanese releases. But for other people who say only can afford one Vita, but they like games from all regions, they will understand this issue. Because in order to change accounts on the current Vita, what you need to do is completely reset your Vita, reboot it, and that's how you change the account. What that also means is that if you have a memory card in there, you either have to take out the memory card or you have to format it. And that really matters, because when you have a 1 GB of onboard memory that potentially has your game saves on it, do I have to completely wipe everything every single time I want to change regions? Now, granted, maybe Sony isn't directly... they don't really want to support multi-regions. And I think that's okay. Actually, no, I don't think that's okay. That's just a pain in the ass, especially for import fees. If you've ever tried to import a game from Japan, or if you're Japanese and try to import a game from North America for some reason, you will notice that you generally have, okay, fine, the cost in yen, plus shipping, and occasionally you get import tariffs. It gets bloody expensive to import. Like, really bloody expensive, unless you have go off a specific site that it's designated as a good retailer for North America. If you try to import a game for, say, Amazon or some random small mom-and-pop store in Japan, which I had to do for my capture card, it gets bloody expensive really fast. So I really hope they have a way to address the idea of switching accounts on your Vita. I really do. The next important announcement here is the Vita TV. Now, the core differences here are that no screen, no built-in controls, same hardware as a Vita, costs $100. That's the big difference here. It costs $100 in order to buy a Vita TV. They're also proposing a bundle with a DualShock controller for $150. Why does of course $100 is based off converting it from yen. Now, why does this matter? Why does $100 matter? It's not just because it's cheaper than a Vita, because the Vita is technically sitting at $200 right now. It's only half the price of a Vita, but you lose the controls and the screen. And of course, portability. The big thing here, though, is look at what other devices are priced at. What is the Ouya priced at? $100. What is a streaming device like the Apple TV? What is that priced at? $100. All of these small box, cheap box, streaming services, and Ouya in terms of gaming, are all priced at $100. So the Vita TV is clearly targeted at this market. But it is different from something like, say, the Ouya. Because the Ouya is specifically designed to play Android games using traditional control schemes. But the problem, of course, is that almost no Android games use traditional control schemes, and vice versa. None of the Ouya games can use touchscreen controls. Whereas when it comes to the Vita has all these traditional controls tacked onto it, built in. And the Vita TV will use a DualShock controller. Now, which DualShock is slightly uncertain. We know that it can use the DualShock 3, but it's still speculation as to whether or not it can use the DualShock 4. And the reason why I'm talking about this in particular is because another part of the Vita TV feature set is that some Vita games will not be playable on Vita TV. That basically means all of the games that are heavily dependent on touchscreen. Like, for example, something like Tearaway, that is not going to be playable on Vita TV, period. It's just going to be impossible with the amount of touchscreen controls on there. Maybe something like Killzone Mercenary probably won't be playable because the entire Melee system is based around the touchscreen, which pisses me off, but whatever. Anyways. However, and yes, people have been complaining about this, the Vita TV can't play all Vita games. I'm looking at the opposite problem. What if the Vita can't play all the Vita TV games? Because let's think about this for a second. The Vita TV is specifically designed to use a DualShock controller. What is the main difference between DualShock and Vita? L2, R2, L3, R3. That matters. It may not matter for every single game out there. Like, for example, a first-person shooter may not need 6 finger controls. Because both triggers and one thumb. However, I've played quite a few games that would love to use 6-finger controls. A very good example, in my opinion, is Armored Core. If you've ever played Armored Core, then you may know what I'm talking about, because that control screen needs a lot of buttons, simultaneous button presses. You need 1 finger for the movement, 1 finger for the aiming, okay. 1 finger for boost, 1 finger for one weapon, a 5th finger for another weapon, and if you're talking Armored Core 4, you need another finger for quick boost. So that's 6-finger controls. I've tried playing, for example, Armored Core 3 Last Raven on my Vita. I still don't have enough buttons. Because again, I have 1 for movement, one finger for movement, one finger for aiming, one finger for boost, and then I'm left with one finger left, just because of the way it's laid out. Because you have 2 thumb areas and then the 2 triggers. To me, this really matters. This really matters to me. Because if you have played Armored Core 3 Portable, then you will understand that you really need a 5th finger for this. Because otherwise you cannot use the sub-weapon, the offhand weapon. Whether it's a sword or a gun, you can't use that weapon without sacrificing something like your ability to aim or your ability to fire your main weapon or something. You have to sacrifice another finger. And when you look at the Vita TV, that is going to have a different button set. Whether or not they actually end up binding different buttons to all the extra triggers, nobody really knows. But they clearly have a different feature set. And that's what worries me. Because I'm worried that if developers start developing for the Vita TV as though it's a underpowered PS3, which means that they take into account only their control scheme and not the Vita control scheme, then we might actually run into an issue. I sincerely hope we never have to run into this issue, but we may have to run into this issue. I really hope we don't. Now, on to the games. The major game announcements that I care about, at least just me, are Soul Sacrifice Delta, Phantasy Star Nova, Terraria, and just on a personal note, Gundam Breaker. Just a quick overview. As far as we know, the Soul Sacrifice Delta game is... well, we actually don't know that much about it. Some speculation says that it's a plus version of Soul Sacrifice. Some people think that it's an expansion or an expandalone version of Soul Sacrifice. Other people think it's just going to be a massive patch. I believe it's been confirmed at this point that it's not Soul Sacrifice 2. But otherwise, we don't really know that much about it. It will feature more stuff, more weapons, more pickups and stuff, but otherwise, we don't know that much. It wasn't really explained that much at the conference. Phantasy Star... the Phantasy Star game, again, we really don't know much about this. All we really know is that it is a Phantasy Star game, duh. It is going to be offline, and it will apparently take place in the same time frame as Phantasy Star Online 2. That's about it. It's just offline Phantasy Star. The Terraria, it's coming to the Vita. Honestly, it's about damn time, because even iOS has Terraria by this point, so we might as well. It's big enough of a title, so yes, we care. And Gundam Breaker is more of a personal announcement. Now, I've already known that Gundam Breaker's been out for a while. Will be coming out for a while. It's coming out October 30th, I believe. Honestly, I just personally care because it's a Gundam game. That's about it. I just as a forward, I will be doing coverage of that as soon as I can, as soon as it shows up on the Japanese PSN, because I am not bloody importing that too many costs. But otherwise, I will be doing a video of that in the future. And other than that, well, there are also all those Japanese games. I am not familiar with most of those other franchises. I mean, yes, there was stuff like God's Eater 2 that was shown, but honestly, God's Eater 2 is slightly old news at this point. But other than that, I would have to say I am very satisfied with this conference, because after a really disappointing Gamescom, after a really disappointing E3, after all those disappointments, it's finally nice to see Sony cares. And that's all I really wanted from this. Sony cares. And Sony has shown that they care. And even with a day with PlayStation video, that little one, that trailer where they show off all their hardware, it doesn't just show off the Vita as a PlayStation 4 companion and a voice, because they have that round table of 4 guys playing God's Eater 2 together. That I think is really important, because again, every single trade show before this, they always showed off remote play, remote play, remote play. They did show the Vita TV as a really cheap PS1 to Vita Mobile emulation device, which is also nice just because, it ships hardware, but other than that, Sony cares. My name is Bean Vison. Thanks for watching.